right, so now that we're all set up, first we're gonna go and create the gonna create our schemas. So that is because that's the way how we are able to store our data. So for sleep files and sleep data. First thing we need to do is create a folder, which is gonna be called schemas. So this one, open it, and then we are going to create a file, which is going to be called sleepfiles.json. And this one is going to contain the structure of our sleep files, so the actual files that we've uploaded. So we're going to give it a name. And we're going to name it sleep files. I will add a description called schema for processing sleep files. So that's the basic. So as we discussed right before, is that we have to define different statuses. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. So statuses. And we have three statuses. So the first status is going to be processing. Second one is going to be completed. And third one is going to be error. So in case something goes wrong, we can put the file in error and we know what went wrong. So that's part one. So then the next part we need to define is the creation transition. And this is a transition that defines how a document gets created. The status that we want to move towards, which we call toStatus, is going to be processing. And the type is manual. And the actions, because we want to define what kind of that we want to trigger the task that's gonna load the file, and then it's gonna load the file and then process that file and split it up into each sample. Sleep data, and this is an action which is called in the X-Horizon environment, we call this a task, and we have to provide the function name. We haven't uploaded this function yet, but that's how we'll call it. So we'll call it sleep file processing task. All right, so now what will happen as soon as we create a document, the creation transition will be used. The document will receive a status called processing, and an action will be triggered that will trigger the task called sleep file processing task. Great. Once the task is completed, we will need to move the document to the completed state or to the error state. So for this, we're going to use regular transitions. So we'll call it transitions. And the first transition that we want to do is we need to give this one a name that's different from the creation transition. And we're going to call this complete processing. The type is also manual one. So manual really means that it needs to be triggered outside from the API or outside of the API of the data source. You can also use an automatic one, but that's outside of the scope of this tutorial. So we need to define also where this transition can be triggered from. So it can also only be triggered from processing. And then obviously you need to define where it is going to, so the toStatus, and that is going to be completed. Then the next transition also needs to get a name, and we're gonna call that one toError. Description. Sorry, no description here. The type, sorry, is going to be also manual, because the task is gonna execute the API call. And then yeah, the from status that we need to define here, from statuses, because you can have multiple. And in this case, that is also going to be processing. So you can only trigger the toError to from a processing status. And then the toStatus is going to be error, like this. So now we have created the basic structure. The next thing that we need to do is define our properties. So what are the properties that our document will contain? So this is a field. This is the field that we call properties. Sorry. And the properties, this is the part that's conformed to JSON schema. So this is, you can just use a regular JSON schema inside of this part. So the first thing that we want to do is store the file token. So that's the token that we'll receive from the file service. So this is type string, and next property I want to have is the error. So in case something goes wrong, that we have some more information about the error. This is going to be a bit more complex. So this is going to be an object, and we're just to show you, inside of the object you have multiple properties. And these properties, so the first property is going to be a name, which is going to be of the type string. And the next one is going to be the message, which is going to be of the type string as well. Good, all right. So now you have defined our entire schema. So this is the way that you, with the X-Horizon data service, can define how the API should interact, so how documents should interact and what kind of calls you can do with them. Yes, all right, seems good. So now we've created the first one. The next one is going to be sleepdata.json. And for this, we're also first need to give it a name. This is going to be a bit more simpler. So this is going to be sleep data. Description. This is going to be a schema for storing processed sleep data. Second is the statuses. So the status that we want to have is just start. We have to define a status, can't leave it blank. And then we have the creation transition. So as soon as we want to create a document, we want to add a toStatus, which is going to go to start. The type is going to be manual. And that's it. So we don't want to trigger any action, or for now, just for the sake of the tutorial, we won't add any condition. You could add a condition so that you could require specific fields to be submitted when you create a document. But for the simplicity of the tutorial, we're not going to dig into that right now. Next, we can define some properties. So what kind of elements do we want to store with this data? So as I defined in the intro, probably what we would be interested in is a timestamp. So the timestamp is going to be the exact time or the date that the sample was taken. So that is a type string. However, we can add a format which is called datetime. And this way, the timestamp will be stored in the database in the background as an ISO string, and we can use our RQL queries to use greater than, lower than, to really filter on those timestamps and make a very accessible and friendly API. So the second is going to be the sleep percentage. So the sleep percentage is going to be of the type number, because it's a number, and obviously we have a minimum, let's say, also of 0 and a maximum of 100. All right. So then the third parameter is probably going to be the sleep state as we defined it. And that's going to be of the type string. But we're going to add an enum to it, so we only allow specific values. That's going to be awake, REM sleep, light sleep, right? Light sleep, and the deep sleep. So we only have, it's only possible to add one of these four values to the sleep state, and we need to have a sleep percentage, otherwise the call will fail and you won't be able to create such a document. So that's going to be the schema for our second, as our second schema to store our data.